Welcome, everybody. My name is Amanda Walsh. I'm the founder of Astrology Hub, and I am here with Shamanic Astrologer Tami Brunk, and we are so thrilled to be together with all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I reached out to Tami because one of the things that she talked about in the 2020 forecast event was this idea of 2020 being a very important time to remember to stay human. And when she said this during this event, then this was before we knew what was going to happen. We didn't know. Most of us had never heard of anything called the coronavirus. The idea of social distancing was like the furthest that I had never heard those words together. Lockdown, what? So she was able to say reading the energy from the astrology of 2020. And when she said, stay human, there was such a strong resonance for everybody. It's like we could sense that the importance of what that might be or what that might mean. And so we wanted to start there today. So Tami, can you say, first of all, why did you say that? What were you looking at energetically? And then let's discuss like what it actually means. What does it mean to stay human?
Okay, so yeah, and I'm so glad to be here and to talk about this. It feels so important now. I was speaking to a couple of different dynamics, but one was the dramatic shift into Gemini and Aquarius. So going from Earth, and all of this great Capricorn energy that has its own shadow and has, some difficult energies to work with as well as being the gift that it is, but shifting also into so much of the Aquarius and Gemini energies so that staying rooted in the heart, staying rooted in our humanity is increasingly important, especially with the movement into Aquarius and what some would refer to as this deeper or this greater movement into the age of Aquarius, or however you want to say that, right? Because with Aquarius comes this emphasis sometimes in what we can see in the world around us on really much more advanced levels of technology. And I think also it goes into that realm of becoming a superhuman. It goes into the realm of AI and all of these other kind of octaves of what it is that we see ourselves moving into. And so it becomes more and more and more important to remember who we are as a species. And it makes me think of, for example, what some indigenous peoples like the Lakota would refer to as what is a true human? How do you become a human? As if that is something really beautiful and precious. Almost like you're not born that, or if you are born that, there's something about the culture that causes you to be forgetful. And so it's actually a great accomplishment to become a true human. Or I've thought of it sometimes recently as a single-hearted rather than double-hearted human. There are some ways that in some Hopi prophecies, there's that reference as well. And so, but to me, that was part of it, was this big shifting into the air energies of Gemini and Aquarius, as well as and all the technological, shifts and changes that come with that. That was a big piece of it.
Can you talk a little bit more about the single-hearted, double-hearted human? I've never heard that before.
Yeah. I'm trying to even remember which prophecy it was that I'd been studying and learning about it. It came actually after a conversation I'd had with my beloved, where I had been really struggling. I'm in a current relationship that's so beautiful and it's so amazing in so many ways. And yet I see myself often, and I actually credit this to the Gemini in me, my Gemini moon, where I feel like I have to set one thing up against another. It's either I'm focusing on the relationship or I'm focusing on my work. I don't know how to bring those two things together into something that's a coherent whole. I set things up against each other. And in that way, it's like I'm separated from myself. I'm at war with myself. And I think that modern humans, in many ways, we've kind of come into a place where that's the setup. And when we live in this moment in time where we're trying to move into the future in a good way, but we're coming from a culture that is that's oriented in many ways opposite to a harmonious relationship with nature and with healthy, thriving communities, and that is distorted in many ways. there's a part of our nature that is wanting to be more organic, that's wanting to connect more to the feminine, that's wanting to be deeply immersed in earth consciousness and to be more in an intimate relationship with our beloved others and focus more of our attention in those areas. And then there's the part of us that's coming from this culture that tells us we have to be bigger, be more, be shinier, be, you know, whatever that is. And we can feel split, profoundly split. And that is I think that it's that split that actually makes us open to some of the negative impacts of this saturation of technology and of other forms of addiction that many of us are really struggling with right now because of the profound changes that are kind of bombarding us.
Mm. You know what is so interesting, Tami, is I'm fine. Of course, I relate with everything you just said and can really understand that feeling of being split and pulled and like there's not enough of you to go around, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm finding in this time is that because all of a sudden I'm a homeschooling mom who also runs Astrology Hub, who is also in a relationship, who also needs to take, it's like all, we have to double down on our spiritual practices for ourselves too, right? So all these things that we're, and I'm growing my garden, like, you know, doing all these things that feel very important. But what I'm noticing is that because time is almost like, for me, and I know everybody's having different experiences, but it's time is like shrunk for me. Like there's actually less time,
Right.
is what it feels like. And what it's forcing me to do though is focus on what is absolutely essential, what is absolutely impactful, and literally let everything else go. Let it go, or like see if there's a more creative way to get it done. And so there's a little bit of a blessing there because it's like, you know, when you have days that feel like, you know, I personally, I could fill pretty much every minute with work if allowed to my own my own resources, you know, my own capacities, I would work. So I think that that in some ways, as it's getting more clear, like what is actually important, what is actually impactful, how are we being asked to show up, and in what ways, and the spiritual work, honestly, all of a sudden is like top of the list. Whereas before it'd be sometimes if there was work or kids or things, it might go. And now it's like, nope, I actually can't function in a day without it. So number one, you know, so I don't know if you're having a similar experience or if it's a little bit different, but I think in terms of, you know, figuring out our value systems and what we actually value as humans, you know, what actually is important. This is a really good time to be doing that.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying is so powerful and potent. And it's what I've noticed is that there's a tendency for humans to kind of remember and forget and remember and forget and remember and forget. I know I do that. Like in this big moment we're in right now, I think I can see for myself, I've had days where it was right up against me, where it's like, wow, I had these really deep insights, like, whoa, like it's now. You know, we've all had those moments where it's like, this is right in front of us, what we've been preparing for. And then all of a sudden, everything else falls away. And that's what the most important thing is. And often in that moment, there are some really uncomfortable feelings around, whoa, like this means I need to let go of that, right? And this means that these other areas are really important. And I'm not a master when it comes to growing a garden, like, you know, as you've talked about, that's pretty vulnerable and scary. I'm also, like you, really good at focusing on work and getting really immersed in that. So yeah, no, I've definitely had that same experience. And I think that that I can say that I also I've seen myself forget and then remember again still when I get a little comfortable. You know, there are moments where it's like, oh, I'm feeling okay again. And then it's like, wait a second, like, no, remember in those moments of deep clarity and keep going back to that.
Yeah. So Tami, we have a really interesting comment by Sharon in our audience right now. And I think it's a really, really good conversation to have. Okay. So she has a lot of Aquarius in her chart. I find that the emphasis of so many of my fellow astrologers on Aquarius and technology is incorrect. It is the communication and dissemination of information for the betterment of mankind that is enhanced by some technologies that we support, not the AI and dehumanization of mankind. Wish this incorrect attribution of Aquarius to technology stops. Now, would you say it's incorrect, or it's just, from what I understand, there's so many different expressions of the same energy, and there's always a higher expression and there's always a more dense expression. So,
oh, exactly. I would so agree with you. And I love what Sharon's saying. It's such an important point to make, because it's true. What we're speaking to is we want to call out the shadow for a moment. And that's what I was saying, is this is what the potential is if we go too far in one direction in these energies. And yet my feeling has always been, it's so important to know and recognize that our technologies can be in service to the earth. Actually, they can be aligned with the earth. They can be aligned with love. So she's right. Sharon's right. You know, really, the problem is not technology. The problem is the culture itself. If we have the maturity as a culture, if we've raised our consciousness to the level that it needs to be raised, so that the technology can be in service to our evolution as a species. However, I have to say, I think that what I have seen as being missing in what I would see as a little bit more of the Aquarian dominant conversation, and again, this is not the most highly evolved Aquarius, but maybe the shadow Aquarius, is that we need to continually remember to bring the earth and more than human species into this conversation about what it means to evolve. It absolutely has to always include that larger consciousness. And, you know, part of the reason why we're talking now, right, Amanda, is because of the post you'd seen on my wall about Starlink, where, you know, Elon Musk's new program, basically, where I had a neighbor who called me and said, I'm seeing these lines, 6 lines of dots across the face of Venus. What is that? And then another friend posted it on my wall, and it's Elon Musk's Starlink, which is kind of another, you know, I don't know how many satellites they're sending up all the time, but it's like 60,000 and then 200,000. And so it's just like this very, very invasive, from the perspective of someone who spends a lot of time under the night sky and is deeply informed by that. You know, our conversation had to do with, okay, like, what is that about and how do we navigate that? And my word when I posted was, I said hubris, you know, and when I said that, I know it's kind of harsh because we're online, you know, we're doing all of this in this way, and yet, so it was reactive, but the feeling was simply that the question I had was, is the way we design our technology, is it honoring of the feminine? Is it circular? Is it in alignment with earth systems, or is it kind of an imposition? Is it coming from more of a mechanistic and more of a way of like, put it on top of the environment? And that's a perfect example. It's not, in no way are those satellites being designed such that they have some kind of an interplay or a dance with the lights that are already in the sky that are our stars. It's just this one human saying, here, we're just going to blast these across the sky. I'm sorry, it's like a boy, an Aries kind of boy, saying, I'm going to play with my toys and do it. I mean, I know I'm sounding kind of harsh, but
no, I mean, I think what as you're speaking, I'm thinking of the consciousness level of the people designing the systems, and what is the intent? You know, what is the intent behind it? What is the consciousness level of the individual? Is the individual integrated with the feminine side and interested? And then you ask the questions of like, have we actually somehow inadvertently given our power to people that don't have a consciousness level that we would like to proliferate on this planet? And what can we as individuals do to exercise our own power and our own consciousness level? And these are big questions. I mean, these are really big questions, because it can feel like that's happening to us. Like, did anybody vote on that? Like, is anybody feeling like, oh yes, that's, and I know there's arguments. Some people think it's a good thing because of, you know, various reasons. Some people don't think it's a good thing. And at the same time, this question of, is the intent to like, what is evolution? You know, is evolution just blind evolution of technology just to continue to see what we can do?
Yeah.
Or is there a different definition of evolution that we want to champion as well?
Right, right. And is there a way, and when we were first talking too, there's like, is there a way of kind of peacemaking? And the word that comes to mind for me is kind of a peacemaking of honoring, to really deeply honor the systems of technology we have and what they give to us. I just want to kind of infuse it with gratitude, like to think this is sacred. It's all sacred. It's all an extension of human consciousness. And so to have a lot of love and compassion for the fact that, and someone like Elon Musk, I don't see these individuals as being, bad in any way. What I see and feel as you're speaking is that, in fact, the problem is that there's not enough of the feminine showing up to actually stand alongside and say, hey, like to have the same level of capacity to be in the room when those decisions are made. I see that as the priestess. I see that as the earth mage. I see that as the grandmothers. A long time ago, I saw that if they're in the circle with the scientists and the the CEOs of these corporations, if they're there as well saying, hey, wait a second, how does this actually connect to, how does it inform earth systems? How does this affect the bees? What is the actual frequency of Wi-Fi, and how is it that we can ensure that that's attuned to the earth as well? How do we upgrade our spiritual technologies to infuse our technologies? That's, I think, the question.
What's interesting is, so just anybody who's been listening to Astrology Hub for a while, that I was complaining about the left side of my head and how just after a day on my entire work's on technology, and it has been for years. But I'm getting more and more sensitive to it, is what I've noticed. And so after a day of being online, my head hurt so bad that I was very concerned. And I think it was the last time we talked that I told the story of the gardenia bush that was calling to me. And so I went to the gardenia bush, I picked a gardenia, I put it on the side of my head, and I felt no pain. And then I would kind of put it all over my body and feel good. So anybody who's been tuning in has noticed I have not done a broadcast without a flower in my hair ever since, because there's something about the field that is harmonizing. It's my field and the flower. It's like a harmonizing event for me. And I don't know if anybody else has tried it. I'm not making any recommendations, blah, blah. But the other thing that we have found, so in that same search, it's like, okay, the flower is actually making a big difference and feeling really amazing. Is there anything else we can do? We were able to find this incredible device that you can put in your home and or carry with you on your body in your car that harmonizes and neutralizes the effects of EMF. And so we tried it, and I've been amazed. It's like, oh my God, I can breathe. I can breathe. The air in the air quality changes in the field, but it makes it so you can still use the technology. So it's really interesting. It's not like all or nothing, like you're saying, a yes and, it's not like no technology's bad, or all technology's great. It's like, okay, how do we use technology in a way that is harmonious with our bodies and with the environment around us? And so it's been a really interesting exploration for me to go down this path of like, no, I need to use it for my work. And I do believe that the work we're doing is positive. It is spreading positive energy into the world. So how can I continue to do my work and continue to live in this body and not be in pain all the time? Are there answers to that? Are there solutions to that? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love everything you're saying. And I remembered when you talked about that with the flower, and I had a call recently where I was just speaking to people about different ways to navigate that. And I love that there's a technology that does that. And for individuals who, maybe can't access that, I think the flower is just another way. Again, when I say stay human, part of what I mean by that is, I've just initiated this Earth Sky Woman podcast and program. And part of that is about, what does it mean to be an Earth Sky woman? And the reason I began this was because my sense is that we are both. We are to be both. And when I think of the sky part of myself, the sky woman, well, that part of me loves to be online. That part of me, I'm a Gemini moon. Like, I like to connect spirit to spirit. This is magnificent. This is amazing. This is like everything you could possibly want. And that part of me is actually fairly well developed. The earth part of me as earth woman is the part that is taking time to really spend outside, is connected to the earth, that has the flower in my hair, that reminds me of what it means to be in a physical body, which I think of as, this is my earth. This is my earth, this body. I need to honor this body. And I'll say that when I first started doing a lot of this spiritual work, I started spending a lot of time. I had a number of people who were sick and in the hospital, and I would spend a lot of time connecting with them. I would see myself with them. I would ask the grandmothers to come be with them and do healings on them. And I was doing that a lot at one point. And I remember getting this really strong, clear message that was like, sweetheart, if you keep telling the universe that you don't need a body, well, then the universe is going to get the idea that you don't need a body. Like, we're in these bodies for a reason. We get to go to spirit when we're done with all this, but right now is this moment of preciousness, of like the particularity of this body, of these fingers, of the ways I have scars that show what my particular life has been like, the particular plants in my backyard that are not like those that are in someone else's. There's the particularity of being in a body on a particular land with a particular lineage, with all of that is precious. It will never happen again. Spirit is timeless and limitless, but this moment, this physical humanness, and I say humanness as an extension of the earth in a sense, where we're part of the larger earth family, it is transient, it's precious, it's gonna change. And that's where I think it's for us to honor that and embrace that. And if we're sky women, and if we're sky people, it's going to be scary sometimes to let go of that addiction in some sense and drop more into our humanness.
Wow. That was just beautiful. Everything you just shared. And, it is that as we're watching the sky become more polluted, or our earth, which has been getting polluted for a long time, where are we polluting our own bodies, and where can we continue to purify this body temple? Because in astrology, I mean, we're talking all the time about the micro and the macro, as within, so without, as without, so within, as above, so below. Okay, so what is that reflecting in us? And I love what you just said, because that's the journey back to, okay, if life is sacred, if being human is sacred, if this lifetime is sacred, how can I more fully embrace and love this body, this land that I live on? And then what are the ripple effects of that? If we focus on that, which we truly can control, what will happen from there? And I would love to address something else that came up here. Michael says the movement of feminism is also often women trying to outdo men rather than hold the feminine vibe. I think that's a really important distortion. What he's pointing out is a distortion of the feminine, and this idea that the feminine means we're the same as men, or like the feminist movement. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Tami.
Oh, I think it's so important. It's such an important thing to bring up, because here's my sense is that when I talk about the feminine, I focus on our sky women. I focus on that a lot. I just want to say, I'm speaking to beyond gender. I'm talking about the way that, I mean, if you want to talk about patriarchy, which is a very rough word, it's a very heavy word, right? It has a lot connected to it, but anyone who would use it should know, and I think more and more we understand what that means is, it's an overemphasis on certain qualities rather than others. And when I think, I want to read his full message again. Could you say it again?
Yeah. So basically, he says,
I want to really
the
listen.
movement of feminism is also often women trying to outdo men rather than hold the feminine vibe.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there's so much to do with that. There's so much to connect with around that. So I think that there's something that's happened in our culture where a lot of women, we also have lost a connection to authentic feminine. And when I say authentic feminine, it's like what I'm talking about with Earth. And even though I say authentic, there's so much right minefields with this. But when I think of feminine, there's so much around it, but part of it has to do with presence. When you talk about it, not about gender, but spirit, it has to do with bringing spirit into matter for some purpose. It has to do with being deeply presenced in the physical body in the moment, having a certain amount of like love and care for this physical material realm. It's everything I was just talking about. That's the feminine. And that doesn't just belong to women. That belongs to women and men. And when people use the very rough kind of word of patriarchy and we need something better than that, really what it means is we become too, this is strange to say in an astrology program, but too sky oriented. And we've come to live too much in the upper chakras, so that we've forgotten what it means to be really fully in our feeling, really fully in our bodies, really fully in the present moment. And that includes experiencing the full spectrum of emotion, among other things. You know, that to me has to do with the feminine journey, is going down and in and being willing to be fully here and present in the, and men and women hold that. But I think it's true that women trying to, well, you know, if you look at the history, oh God, this is such a longer conversation, right? What do you want to say about it, Amanda? There's so much more to say.
Well, why
But
don't you were going to go somewhere if you look at the
okay,
history.
well, I just, you know, I mean, looking at the way that women historically have been property, I mean, literally, legally, this is an issue. I mean, you want to be simple about it. Like, I just want to say the challenge, though, is that the women, you know, our grandmothers or mothers in some cases who were part of that movement of what you might refer to as first wave feminism, whatever that is, that they were wanting to have more equality, which makes so much sense. And the tools that they had to claim power were masculine tools. Authentic feminine power is a very different form of power. It's much more radiant. It's much more vast than wounded masculine power. And that's what I want to say. We don't even know what true masculine is, really. Like, we don't know what true feminine feels like. We don't know what true masculine feels like. It's not about there being too much of one or the other. It's that they're both wounded. And I see that a lot with men too, when there was that whole era where there was the kind of like the sensitive new age man, you know, there's a lot of criticism of that, even though what it was really about is men wanting to learn to get in touch with their emotion and feeling, which is a good thing, you know, to do some healing around all of that. The challenge, I think, often is that in that archetype or a particular way of expressing the masculine, there was a vacuum of an authentic connection to masculine energy. There wasn't that true presence of a masculine figure in that human's life, actually woman or man often, you know, especially in certain communities, because maybe the man's working so much that he can't be present for his family, which is also part of what we need to heal in the culture. And so it's not that it was a man who was more feminine, it's that he didn't have contact with authentic masculine energy. And I'm going to get so much for this, right? We're talking about gender here. I mean, this is really,
Tami, I feel sometimes like for me, moving it to yin and yang is helpful, because not only do we have the visual of that, and also it's completely separate from gender.
It's more neutral.
It's more neutral and it's more energetic. It's like a
Yeah.
yin energy and a yang energy, and there is a difference, and they are both equally important, even though they're not the same.
Yeah.
You know, they're not the same, but they're both equally important. And when you're out of balance on one end or the other, things are off. And that's what we're seeing. I think when we're talking about, you know, what does it actually mean to be human? What does it mean to be, what does it mean to have that balance, to have that harmony? What does that actually look like? And I think so much of this is we are discovering it. And we are the ones exploring. Yeah, and we're the ones exploring these topics. And there's a reason why we're exploring a topic like, what does it mean to be human? Like, you would
Yeah.
think we should just be like, oh, well, this is what it means and this is what it looks like. And it's very clear
Right.
and obvious.
Yeah.
But there's been so much distortion for so long, and so much repression or programming. And so there's this like shedding that is happening right now as we
Mm.
discover what it actually means to be human and to stay human,
Yeah.
and to create technologies that honor both human and all living beings. And
Right.
so
Right.
and someone talked earlier in the chat about us being at a crossroads, and either we're doubling down on these things that take us away from being human,
Mhm.
or we find a way to infuse humanness into. I mean, technology is not going anywhere. I
No.
don't see it going
Yeah.
anywhere. I
I
don't
don't
think
either.
anybody does, right? So how do we actually harmonize with it? And that is a crossroads that we're at.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
okay, so the other thing that we wanted to talk about today was this idea of the eco sapien. And one of the things so Tami is one of our inner circle guides later this year for Astrology Hub. And we have our inner circle guides choose a theme for the month that they are in charge of. And then also a mastery class that they're going to teach. And I remember getting the title for Tami's, and they choose it like, a year in advance, or, months in advance. And Tami's title was the rise of the eco sapien, or maybe not the exact words, but something about playful people power, and this new paradigm of playful people power. And I was like, what is she talking about? Again, this was before any of these things were happening. And now that we're here, it's like, whoa, that is actually powerful. Like
Mm-hmm.
this rise of a new kind of human,
Mm-hmm.
still being human, but a new consciousness is really what it is. And this
Mm-hmm.
idea of playful people power, like, what does that mean? So could we talk a little bit about that? Why you would have chosen that kind of title or
Yeah.
that kind of mastery class, and then how
Mm-hmm.
we can start to work with those ideas.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the rise of the Eco Sapien has to do with the intersection of a number of different cycles. And really the key one initially was Pluto and Saturn, Saturn and Pluto conjunct in Capricorn, and with the South nodes for both, just we know how massive, we know this is a massive time for change, massive change. And what is the change that's needed? What is it that is absolutely critical that we as a human species and as a culture are needing to address, that needs to change? What is the power shift, the power balance shift that needs to happen? That's the core question right now. In my sense, looking at it, is that ecocide is the key issue. Now it's not about a shift of power from, where we're moving into the era of the Cold War, or like World War I, where we're shifting from the Ottoman Empire into another power structure. It's not about any of that. It's shifting from, it's a species level change that's required if we're going to make it on this planet. And what that species level shift is going to have to be, and we're just planting the seeds for it now, is that there's going to be an awakening of this eco-sapien kind of consciousness within a critical mass of humanity, that's going to be the only thing that's going to take us into this era and this phase where we align our consciousness, we attune and we plug in our technologies into Gaia and into this larger intelligence field that we seem to have disconnected ourselves from. That's what's required. That's what's absolutely the power balance shifts. And I wouldn't say that it has to be now, Gaia's in charge, although that could be interesting, but that we're co-creating, that we're actually in a conversation, that we've restored our conversation with Earth intelligence. We've begun to listen again. We've actually begun to, and I think that's what's missing. And when we were talking about Elon Musk, that's the thing that hurts my heart. I'm like, and again, it's not a blame around anything. I just think it's the absence of the feminine in certain kinds of consciousness that are, I just think it is as a boy who has a lot of power and he's trying to do things that are good in some ways, but he's missing something. And it's the capacity to deeply listen, which is what this great pause is about. We need to listen as much as we talk. we need to stop as much as we are continually in this kind of doing addicted action. Like, we can't actually create new technologies and systems that are aligned with Earth systems unless we're going through a collective descent right now. We have to. We absolutely must. I mean, I think, I don't know. So that rise, I see that as the power shift that's needed, and that I see. And, once COVID hit, I mean, I think we all saw it. We all felt it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who I see just saying the things that I've thought for so many years. It's like coming out of their mouths that, I mean, I have to tell you, I think that's what it means to be human. It's natural for us. It's authentic to us. It's genuine for us to love the earth. I don't care where you're at in the political spectrum. I don't care who you voted for. We all care about the earth, actually. I think we do. I think we're actually on the same page. I just think that in some ways, there's something that kind of almost got turned off in us, where we started to give our power away to something this goes to the playful people power, right? Can I just talk about that? That had to do with Gemini, because I see the big thread this year is North Node in Gemini. That's realigning us with our collective soul purpose. I see Venus, a new Venus cycle in Gemini. That's the way that the feminine, whether it's expressed through men or women, is leading us and guiding us. It's Gemini. And so when I see the positive vibration of Gemini expressed, what I want to dream into and what I want to activate and engage, it has to do with, it's kind of populist, among other things. Gemini tends to be a populist sign. And so it has to do with playfulness. I think playfulness, imagination, creativity. We're in a vacuum right now where a lot of what we've been doing is not working. So, and we see that, and we see these systems around us not functioning. So we need to be able to fill that with a new imagination, imaginative ideas about how we can move forward. So that's part of Gemini. But also, I see Gemini as this aspect that can help us to, oh gosh, I just lost my train.
Gemini. So we have playful, yeah, yeah. That is Gemini. But another thing you've always talked about with Gemini that I've really connected with is the magician.
Yeah, well, there's the magician, but there's also, and this was somewhere else I was going to go with that, but what I wanted to speak to more so than that was, and I never hear anyone else speak to this with Gemini, but I think that Gemini in its heart, Gemini that has a connection to the feminine, and I mean the feminine in terms of the spirit being in matter, that's the Gemini that has the ability to remember the language and the conversation of how the earth can speak to us. So how we talk to a tree or a plant and we listen, and how it is that we be in a conversation with the stars and the moon and the sun, and we see them as part of our larger family. So I actually see Gemini in some ways as connecting to that original human essence, that magical child inside of us, who remembers the whole universe and earth as being alive and conscious and in a conversation with us. And that's also part of where I saw this playful people power, is that to me, I think we have for too long given our power to these authoritarian figures, again, whether it's Elon Musk or whether it's our president or whatever, where there are all these big leaders that we kind of deify. And I think Gemini flattens that. I think that's part of the function of Gemini, is to be more about being more populist and being more about turning to each other to create something together. And again, I think that that's part of what we're needing right now, is to actually, and we're seeing that, what we can create together, and how we can inform the technologies ourselves through these conversations we're having, and through the use of flowers, or I'm drinking these herbs from my garden, like to infuse my water, which I think is, again, like when I'm emitting my own frequency into these airwaves, it's going to be informed by the earth beneath my feet. It's going to infuse that into it as well.
one of the things you're talking about, there's so much there, but there's this idea of like decentralized creativity.
Yeah,
One of the
absolutely.
things one of the things that's been happening is creativity has almost been centralized
Hmm.
with Hollywood,
Yeah.
with the big tech companies that are leading the creative expression of this planet. And what you're talking about is looking to each other
Yes.
to create decentralized creativity
Yeah.
that isn't dependent on an Elon Musk, since just we're
Right.
picking on him today for some
Right.
reason. You know, but is more like we are each sharing. And the thing that's beautiful about that is that we hold keys for each other. So there, when
Mhm.
we share the visions and the ideas and the imagination and the creativity, it unlocks other aspects for other people, and they go, oh yeah, I've thought about that too, and
Absolutely.
what if we did it this way? And I was actually having this experience with my daughters the other day. We were in this like existential conversation. It was awesome. And we were talking about like, how could humans do this better? How could we do it? and
Mhm.
and Sophia and I, my 8-year-old, found ourselves lost in the nostalgia of the way the Hawaiians used to do it. And we were, tapping and tuning back into the picture of how life was here in Hawaii. And and it's beautiful to me. I know it wasn't perfect, but there's so many beautiful things about it. My daughter Madeline, who's 11, goes, you guys, that's the past. It's over. It's not going to be the past. We're not going to do what we did before exactly the way we did it. And this present moment, we're in the present, and it is what it is right now, but we're creating the future. It's going to
Yeah.
be different. And it was like, whoa, yeah, you're right. And it was
Yeah.
just so it's, but the point of me telling that story is that we have this opportunity to take that power into
Mhm.
our own hands. And there's so many times
Yeah.
we can fall into the trap of, we don't have any power. It's happening to us. It's like,
Right.
no, we do.
No.
We really do.
Yeah.
We need to take it. We need to own it,
Mhm.
and not let it be hijacked by the
Mm.
creative imagination of others. And when we fixate
Yes.
ourselves to the media, to other people's ideas of what's
Hmm.
going to happen as if it's
Hmm.
prescribed, we all
Right.
know that's not possible. There are
Yeah.
infinite possibilities. So
Right.
one outcome to this thing is not possible. It's like,
Right.
no, that actually doesn't make any sense. There are many, many, many different ways that this can play out, and we are participating in that. We
Absolutely.
are
Yeah. We're
contributing to that.
participants. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's what it's about, is remembering we're participants, because there's so many ways that we live in a culture where it's wonderful, but we may not be creating ourselves. We're kind of trained to be consumers, you know, and that's a wonderful thing. And it's even more fun to make something imperfectly ourselves, you know. And
Yes.
I think, but I love that your daughter said that, because I think that's the thing. I mean, like I said to you early on, I feel like part of what my deepest desire is to help people to reconnect to this like deep, that this indigenous ancestor, or this part of ourselves that is connected to the earth, that kind of, you could say, enchanted human, the human who sees everything as alive, sentient, and sacred. It's to reconnect with that. And it's absolutely true that it's not going to be the same as it was. Where your daughter's so right. And I remember having a conversation with this woman. She's a missionary. She was a friend of my sister and my brother-in-law's over Thanksgiving. And she asked me what I did, and I told her, and it was kind of awkward. You know, it was like I had to explain it to her. But she ended up saying, well, are you talking about trying to return to the Garden of Eden? And it was such a good question. And I was like, that's a really good question. I think it's a little bit, it's kind of like the difference between a child being very innocent. You know, a child is very innocent, and we as humans, when we're in our early cultures, in our early cultural roots, and I'm not saying that our earliest cultural roots are even the same as indigenous peoples now, but when we started, we were very innocent, you could say. But now we've gone through all these initiations, and you could say that a wise person, a very wise person, returns to the state of being almost like a child, where everything becomes more wonder-filled and magical again. Not that they don't have irreverence and a sense of humor and they can't see the shadow, because we have all of that. But there's that kind of return to, you know, seeing, what is that T.S. Eliot quote, that you come back and you see it again with new eyes? I think it's more like that. I think your daughter's right. Like, it's not going to be the way it was.
No, and Tami, I mean, I don't know about all of you out there, but I can actually feel a bit intimidated by the idea of living the way the indigenous cultures did,
Oh yeah.
because it's like, I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up indoctrinated in the ideas that I am completely connected and can talk to everything. I mean, there's stories of Hawaiian women who would go out to the ocean and just open up their apron and a fish would jump in. We were so harmonized, and a
Right.
fish would say, okay, like I will sacrifice and become a part of you. And it's like, gosh, I can't go out to the ocean and just open up my little apron and have a fish jump in. So I think that, but one of the things I was thinking too is that some of the things that we've witnessed in terms of the environment clearing up and certain healing that's happening on the planet as we've become less active on it,
Yeah.
how quickly that happens. I think I need to check my intimidation as well, because there's this idea that it takes a lifetime and it's inaccessible to me, and I'm not Native Hawaiian, so do I even have that capability? These things that where we cut ourselves off from the possibility of our own connection to the wisdom, because we don't think that we are good enough or right enough or brought up the right way, so it's an interesting thing to observe as well, that
Absolutely.
potentially as quickly as this thing has happened on the planet, where problems that we thought would take, that maybe were even unsolvable, seem to be healing. Maybe the same thing is within us, that ability to reconnect in and to start to listen and to start to learn. Maybe it could be as quick if we stop for a moment and reconnect in.
Yeah, beautiful. I loved you saying that so much. I think that sounds right on. I mean, it's really, when I think about the man who had spoken, Michael, I can't remember his name. What I want to say too, it goes back to that feminine masculine, right? It doesn't need to be about feminine masculine. It can be about soul versus spirit, or soul and spirit. And when you're talking, it feels to me like the soul, I think, and we can debate about what that is, but the soul is the part that needs the deeper listening. The soul is the part that needs that great pause so that she or he can be heard more deeply. And that's, the soul is the realm of healing from my perspective. That's where we heal and we become whole, is from a deeper connection to the soulful part of ourselves. And I think you're right. Like, and it's not just indigenous, or it's not feminine or masculine or whatever. It's just what it means to be a human being who's fully present, like fully present. And I agree. I think we are wired for healing and wholeness as a species, as a planet, and it can be very rapid that we come back into balance. Basically, we're just out of balance.
So many different avenues to continue to explore with you, Tami. I mean, and I know you actually have to go, but I'm just like, no, I want to keep talking. Our Gemini moons just go like,
I know, right?
Off the charts.
Yeah.
Yes. But can you speak real quickly too, because you are the first one that I heard speak about Gemini with the magician, and the reason why I think it's important in the context of this conversation, or magic, Gemini and magic, is because when we're talking about transmuting harmful, whether it's EMF, whether it's like actual fields that don't resonate with our physical body, whether it's a virus that doesn't resonate with our physical body, whatever the onslaught, being able to take that and transmute it and transform it into something harmonizing. It seems to me like, even if this is just in this moment of transition and time on this planet, being able to do that is extraordinarily important. So, and I know we're moving into all this Gemini energy. So can you just speak to why you would say Gemini is associated with magic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you think Gemini is traditionally ruled by Mercury, when you look at Mercury, you look at Gemini, you look at the magical traditions of the West, of alchemy, there's deep, deep, deep roots and connections with the sign and with the planet Mercury, with all those things. So, but But I also think of Gemini is a sign that knows how to move between the worlds. Gemini is a shapeshifter. Gemini is the sacred human. Gemini is, in native stories, it's about coyote. And but as the magician, as the shapeshifter, as the one who knows how to move between the worlds, I think of Gemini also as multi-dimensional. And when you think of Gemini and Aquarius both, what they have in common is they both kind of navigate the realms of quantum. And so when we want to, we're bringing all those different pieces together. I'm mashing a lot together here, but to me, it just speaks to humanity's project over many generations now, which is to open to our full multidimensionality. And so when we talk about people power and how that's so essential, it relates to this. It has to do with truly and fully activating our full potential, which is the beauty of the human journey over this period of time, is how does each individual open to their full potential? And then, and part of that is to know that we are multidimensional. Gemini understands time is not linear. We can navigate. We often work with our future selves. We let our future selves draw us to them. There's tremendous power in that. We understand that at a time like now, there are many timelines converging at once. And so we get to actively work with those different potential outcomes and timelines, and focus our energy on the one we want to actually experience. There's a lot that Gemini knows that because it's a lighter energy, you can shift it in the realm of imagination, in the realm of energy. And if enough people are shifting that and transmuting it, it really literally can take physical dense form. So I think Gemini we need we need the power of the magical child that lives inside of us to have a sense of possibility and wonder, and to know how to learn to remember how to play well with others, to co-create with others in a good way, to also forgive more rapidly, to be able to speak to our feelings. And I think of this as also the gift of Cancer doing the handoff to Gemini now. Is I've long felt that what we're learning to step into, and also with Chiron and Aries, is kind of like these books, maybe when you were raising your kids, that like a 2-year-old would read, where it has all these babies' faces, and they would say, well, this is angry, this is sad, this is that full emotional fluency and literacy, where like little kids, we can learn, I feel really frustrated right now, or I feel really sad, or you know what I mean? So that's part of the magic of Gemini, I feel, is on one hand rooted in being very human in kind of a simple way, and yet at the same time dropping from that into our wholeness, into our multidimensionality. And I think the key to all of that with Gemini is play. Play is magic. And if we can remember how to play again, because that's been taken out of us in many ways. When we become adults, we forget how to play, and we're going to need to learn to remember how to play in order to create a new world together, which is what's required. That's what we're needing to do.
And in that playfulness, there's an innocence, there's a joy, and that's the vibration from which we would want to create a new future.
Right, exactly. And I think as we're speaking to all of this, I want to really honor, this whole year I've felt the Saturn Pluto energies cannot be denied. They are the undercurrent. There's something very, it's demanded that there's a realness, there's a sobriety beneath all of this. There's the need to pace ourselves. There's the need to also let ourselves drop into grief. There's the need to let ourselves, and that's part of being human, letting ourselves feel all those things. And yet I think there's also, as we're willing to be authentic in our feeling and in the states of transformation we're going through, that what arises from that is this feeling of possibility and joy. And I tell people a lot of times, if you feel really happy right now and you're feeling really excited, and you look around and other people are not so excited, don't feel bad about being happy. Be exactly where you are and bring more of that vibration into the world. That's important.
For sure. Well,
And
in the spectrum of emotion, I mean, the
yeah,
more we allow ourselves to feel the grief and
yeah,
the things that are happening, that the Saturn Pluto kind of
yeah,
energies, the more we can actually access those Gemini
yeah,
playful, shape
exactly.
shifting,
Yeah,
magical energies. So it's actually perfectly designed, because
yes.
if we're being asked to embrace a bigger spectrum,
Mm,
then and go beyond what we thought was possible, we're going to
yeah,
have to feel it all. So
right. Yeah,
what a
yeah.
perfect setup. I mean,
What
we're
a
definitely
perfect
having the
setup.
opportunity to do that. And I like that
Yeah,
you say, I do know that there's a lot of people that feel bad for feeling joy or feeling happiness, but that is the energy, if they're feeling that, to circulate that. And
mhm. Yeah. It's like, don't worry, you'll have your moments. You
yes,
will
you
not feel
will have
that
your
way all the
moment.
time. And when you feel
Definitely.
that way, let yourself feel that way. When you feel in deep grief, let yourself be in deep grief. When you know, there's something about just holding, like that's being human, letting ourselves be human.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, that's full circle right there.
Full circle.
Thank you so much, Tami, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for your open minds. Thanks for your open
Mm,
hearts. Thanks for just continuing to tune into these special edition episodes. It's such a true joy and pleasure to share the astrological lens or conversation that we can have through these times, because there is always an invitation. There's always an invitation for us. And right now, more than ever, the planets have a lot to say and a lot of reminders for us. So thank you for tuning in. Tami, such a pleasure as always.
as always, thank you, Amanda. How amazing and fun always to talk to you.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. If you have not yet signed up to get alerts, or not alerts, it's basically a summary for all the special edition episodes that are coming out right now. You can do so at astrologyhub.com/podcast. Every week, I'm sending out an email that's saying, here are all the different things that you can tune into, and it's all in one easy place for you to access. So if you're interested in that, just go to astrologyhub.com/podcast, and sending all of you lots and lots of love as always. Take care.